and welcome to today's Frontier Opening Bell. My name is Agnes Gitau, stepping in for your regular host, Mr. Boasen Omofaye. And today, to discuss Africa's financial headlines, I am joined by Ali Kansatu. He's the Chief Executive Officer, Rich Management Nairobi. Welcome, Ali.
Thank you, Agnes, and welcome.
I'm also joined by Onyenka Ijeoma. He's an industrial good analyst with Vertiva Capital Lagos. Good morning, Onyenka.
Good morning, Agnes. It's nice to be here.
Also on the show is Akintunde Sulaiman. He's a research analyst at Greenwich Merchant Bank from Lagos. Welcome, Akintunde.
Good morning, Agnes. Thank you very much for having me.
And to start the show, we're going to look at the Africa's equity market, which had a mixed performance throughout. We'll look at Nigeria. You are in the positive at 0.13%. Ivory Coast had 0.1% in the positive. Egypt, the only one struggling, recorded minus 296. Kenya, all share index was at 0.35%, and South Africa at just plus 0.99%. To look at the regional markets, we start with East Africa, where the headlines making the show today are that Kenya Re selling Ritual Plaza in Kisumu at 1 billion shilling. CBK Forex Reserve nosedive by $615 million to $8.2 billion. Not sure what has, just last month, Central Bank Kenya had said they had enough Forex over 5 months import cover. Perhaps we'll look at why there has been a nosedive. Citi sees Safaricom earnings dip to Kenya shillings $54.1 billion. And Tanzania, this is a story making headlines. ARM Cement creditors only get a meager $50 million. This is after the Tanzania government imposed a tax on the sale of the ARM cement. Another story that is making headlines just before Tanzania's election is that Tanzania awards 10 new licenses to Canadian mining company Barrick Gold, which only last week paid the Tanzanian government $40 million in taxes. So an interesting story coming out of Tanzania just before elections. Perhaps, Ali, you can take us through the East African market.
Yes, so let me, Agnes, thank you. Let me first start with the central bank FX reserves. $615 million in 1 month is quite a chunky drawdown. And I think partially that was because of defending the Kenya shilling. The shilling popped up in the early hours this morning to a fresh record low of 109.10 before recovering a little bit to 108.80. But there's a lot of concern as to the value of the shilling and the central bank's ability to maintain that value. So I think this is going to, the optics of the number is very high, Agnes, and people are going to focusing on that. Africa Confidential, which is a weekly or bi-monthly magazine, was also similarly saying that Kenya had not availed itself of the debt scheme that the Group of 20 had proposed, and this was going to put further pressure on the shilling. Kenya Re is a very interesting company. It's valued on a P ratio of less than 2. It's been like that for as long as I can remember. They're obviously looking to liquidate some of their property portfolio. This is the reinsurance plaza in Kisumu. Reserve price is just under $10 million. Safaricom, which is going to release earnings on November in the second week of November, and this is 50% of the market capitalization of the Nairobi Securities Exchange, and hence a bellwether for the stock market. And it's really been underpinning the stock market. It's down only about 5% year to date versus an NSE 20, which is down about 27%. Citi looking at the earnings there and marking it down, then marking it up quite considerably for 2022. I'm not as bearish on these earnings. The concern has been because the central bank introduced a situation where M-Pesa movements of less than $10 were free. And a lot of folks think that would crimp the earnings. M-Pesa is the engine of Safaricom's earnings. But, you know, from what I can see, wallet size increased during this pandemic. And really, you know, in any pandemic, it's about digitization, it's about mobile money. So I'm not as skeptical as Citi. I'm a bit more bullish than that. Tanzania, interesting two stories. Of course, we had the election on Wednesday, and there's a lot of noise around that, whether it's totally free and fair. Vodafone also running into trouble because apparently they're blocking bulk SMSs and also blocking SMSs which quote the opposition leader's name. Arm Cement took a huge bet in Tanzania, and they've now sold off that facility they built in Tanga, which is going to be the oil and gas hub, interestingly, for the Uganda pipeline. You know, practically all the money was taken by the Tanzanian tax authorities from that sale, leaving just $500,000 for shareholders, and there's been a lot of unhappiness expressed at that. And then finally, you correctly said, Barrick gave the government $40 million a few weeks ago. That looks like a smart bit of business when you see that headline that they've just been awarded 10 new licenses. So obviously there was some kind of quid pro quo, and maybe Barrick Gold understand the Tanzanian authorities better than ARM.
Thank you very much, Ali. They say the best time to make deals, especially in Africa, is during a transition, and I think hopefully this doesn't come into dispute if we find another administration post-election, if CCM doesn't win the election. But that's very interesting. On the Arm Cement, has that been disputed, or is that the final deal? Are they going to sell off the Tanzania?
So I think the sale has essentially gone through. Arm Cement has been with the liquidator administrator, but I'm sure they're going to object to that tax charge. But I haven't seen a report to that effect. Maybe they're looking to take it out of the public domain and engage with the authorities offline. But there has been no further development since then.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Ali. Tanzania is one market to look out for. I think the last 5 years has been absolutely difficult for a lot of businesses operating in Tanzania. We are likely to see maybe a change of policy under whichever administration comes in, but certainly one market to look out for. But I guess everybody needs to do what Barrick Gold is doing, get on the right side with the administration. Thank you, Ali, for that breakdown. Off to Nigeria. The whole of last week, Nigeria has made headlines, obviously due to the ongoing protest and the curfew imposed in Lagos, obviously putting a strain on businesses. So I think businesses reopened today, and a lot of companies will be counting their losses after that really difficult time. And so the next headline in Tanzania, Lafarge Africa, net income rises to 28.2 billion Nigerian naira, which is quite interesting. Another interesting story is Dangote Cement postponed meetings over countries due to the current situation in the region. Another story coming out of West Africa is that Ghana partners with Egypt Air to launch a new airline. Quite interesting when the aviation sector is struggling. It is good to see where this takes us to. Suleiman, please take us through the Nigerian market.
Thank you, Agnes. For the Nigerian banks and the insurance, it's a bit sad, and it's just difficult at this time to quantify those losses that will be incurred. But for certain, we are going to see that there will be reduced inflows into the banks via direct investment or portfolio investments, because the risk level of Nigeria currently in the international market, we have skyrocketed. And investors will be wary of coming into the Nigerian market at the moment. We are going to see a lot of loans go bad. We're going to see higher payment on those loans on the books of the banks, because a lot of businesses that ought to have made some payments, whether for the monthly or the quarterly payment, will have to slow down on those payments. Businesses that are taking loans to to make some capital investment would have incurred some losses. This means that the banks will struggle to get back their loans. Not just this for the protest, but just to see that we are just getting out of a pandemic, which we are currently seeing like a second wave across the globe. And from the first wave, we realized that Africa had a bit of lag. Are we having the second lag on the second wave? That is another criteria to put in mind. Also, we're going to see NPL spikes. We're going to see non-performing loans across the banking sector spike because there'll be some backdrop on payback on those loans. And for the insurance company in Nigeria is quite low. We've had about we have just about less than 8% contribution to GDP for the insurance sector. A total contribution of about 65 billion to total GDP, which is very, very low. And from losses we've seen, I mean, looking at the current the Q2 reports for the Nigerian GDP, there was a slag. There was the insurance sector lagged by about 29%, and we're expecting it to lag further, because there will be a lot of premium payments, or there will be a lot of payment back to those who had made losses. And looking at the average gross premium that has been paid by insurance that's been received by insurance companies is about just 35 billion. And already we are estimating that buses alone for the Lagos State government is going to cost about 4 billion. And that tells us the degree at which the insurance company is going to be hit. I'll leave you, Joma, to talk about WAPCO because that's his specialty. Then I'll dive into the to Airtel. Airtel Africa saw a spike in their revenue for about 16%. But however, when you dip it down to what returns to the shareholders, we are seeing a loss of about 9%. This is a compounded effect of the valuation of currencies across their key markets. Nigeria devalued. We saw the devaluation in Kenya. We saw another devaluation in, I think, it's Zambia. This is the key places that they play. However, their revenue contribution was largely due to data and mobile money. Understandable, because a lot of businesses work from remotely over the period, and data subscription kind of skyrocketed because workers working from home decided had to just subscribe. Mobile money is understandable because the banks they've been working not just remotely, but not as much as they used to do. We see a lot of branches are closed down, so you see people relying on this mobile money banks and to get credits, to get other sort of agencies or services. However, our forward outlook for Airtel Africa is still positive. While the weather on the devaluation of the currency, but again, we have to keep in mind the second wave. Are we going to experience a second wave in Africa? If we do, this is going to be very drastic. We're already seeing slowdown across various economies, and will it further go down? This is a question we have to wait to answer.
Thank you very much, Akintunde. Interesting. I've always been really curious about Nigerians' insurance sector. Thinking with such a big population, the penetration should be a little bit high. Perhaps you can touch on what are some of the challenges that makes the insurance sector struggle in such a large market.
So the insurance sector, Nigerians, to be very candid, the insurance sector has not really worked in Nigeria because Nigerians have a lot of beliefs. Nigerians are very religious people, to be very candid. So rather than go pay those premiums, I'll sit at my house and say a lot of prayers and hope I don't get my car burnt. I don't have my house destroyed. Also, penetration, I think it has a lot to do with the structure of the insurance industry. There needs to be a lot of enlightenment. There needs to be some ease of insurance. Paying a premium, if we look at the operations of insurance across the globe, insurance premium is paid like on a monthly basis. But in Nigeria, we have to pay the insurance for the whole year, which is a huge cash flow to get out of the bank. I mean, why don't I pay the insurance coverage of my car on a monthly basis? As I pay for the power, I pay for every other service. So if they can structure the payment of the premium So on a monthly basis, rather than the annual basis that it is right now, it will encourage a lot of persons to to subscribe to insurance services. But if we keep expecting me to cough out a huge sum at the beginning of the year, or at the point where my insurance coverage is off, it's scary, and it's a cash flow I don't want to lose at some point. And we will just go, I'll go and pay my house, I'll go and pay my house. So I think it's a major bane in the insurance company. Aside the infrastructure, it's also the belief that that we have a very strong God, so we are not going to go for insurance.
Oh, thank you very much, Akintunde, for that. Onyenka, please take us through the other West African stories, Dangote Cement and the UPDC.
Yeah, okay, thank you very much. So Dangote Cement released a notice last week, towards the end of the week, that they will be postponing their board meeting, scheduled to mull over the Q3 results, subsequent to which they will publish the results on the Nigerian Stock Exchange. They received, approval from the exchange to publish it in the first week of November or so. And I expect that we'll see that theme recurring across many of the other companies that are set to release. Dangote Sugar has also released in notice, a similar notice to that. A lot has been affected by this, not just in terms of physical meeting spaces, but also network infrastructure has also been damaged, and also physical infrastructure such as servers and companies have also been hit. We don't have as much information as to how deep the damage has been on Dangote Cement, but hopefully it's not significant, and we'll get those details later. For WACO released their results over the weekend. It was a mixed bag, to say the least. On a year-on-year basis, we continue to perform well. We still saw them release. We still saw them perform positively. So revenue was up 10% year on year. EBIT was up 16% year on year, and net income was up about 37% year on year to around 28 billion. So compared to expectations, it was still a miss. That is just putting it mildly. We saw their top line coming in line with expectations. We had seen some recovery from the slump, that we saw during the pandemic, during Q2, and we expected that to continue. We saw that happen, and that came largely in line with expectation. But that was about the only similarities. From there on, we saw PAT coming at around just under 5 billion, as opposed to an expectation around 11 billion. And this was largely due to a sharp jump in their cost of expenses. It could be, the investment, and for context, we saw gross margin coming at around 13%, down from 42% in the second quarter, which is a very, very sharp drop. And it's not just that; it's also taking us back to pre-divestment levels. We know that pre 9 months 2019, WAPCO had been having operating challenges due to their South African business, and due to their net interest expenses, because they were largely over leveraged. They have been able to take out all that, and we've been seeing significant gains. And outside of that, they had launched a strong cost management program that had been helping them improve their gross margins and operating margins over the past couple of quarters. And this had culminated in the impressive gross margin figure we saw in the second quarter. But coming down into the third quarter, we saw that deteriorating very quickly. And we'll be looking to the company to understand why the figures came in that way. Outside of that, we saw UPDC moving ahead with their onboarding. Um, UPDC has largely been one of the major problem children of the UAC group in Nigeria. Due to a weak real estate sector, especially at the luxury end of the real estate sector, the company has been suffering significantly. They've taken a lot of impairments and have had to reduce their foreign denominated loans because it was eating significantly into their profits. The company took a decision last year to spin off both the property development company and the REIT, which was powering the company at the same time. Um, However, they seem to change strategy of the property development company because they sold the controlling stake to custodian investment, but they're still going ahead to unbundle the REIT from the larger group, which is actually sad because the REIT was performing well on its own, separate from the UPTC. But it's all in all, it's still in line with the company's strategy. It just signals that UACN is looking to get back into business.
Thank you very much, Onyenka, for that, and Akintide for that breakdown on West African market. Moving on to South Africa, and South Africa businesses group want a tough budget from Tito Mboweni this week. I know, Ali, you're a fan of Tito, so perhaps we can discuss what is expected from South Africa. Another interesting story from South Africa is Botswana synergies to buy a stake in ZWL. Then tech market, Altron moves to list Bytes, a UK subsidiary, which is a tech company subsidiary on the Johannesburg Stock Exchange. Ali, please help us through with the South African stories.
So, as you correctly said, I am a big fan of Tito. I think Tito is one of these marvelous, ahead of the curve finance ministers who says it as it is. He's very live and direct, and I can't think of any time I've disagreed with him, I must say. But he has got an incredibly difficult task, which is presenting his budget. This is going to be the largest deficit since 1914 in percentage terms. And he's got to square an incredibly, fiendishly complicated situation. He's got to support the SOEs. He's got to support the citizens in this pandemic. And he's got a very, very difficult task. Ramaphosa's already committed a great deal of money for the recovery, which he's got to find from somewhere. So far, I think South Africa has done reasonably well because it is a destination which has, I think, sucked money away from places like Turkey, where, another typical emerging market destination. So in the comparison, I think South Africa has come off better, and that's what supported the rand, which is obviously quite weak, but in the context of this year, it isn't bad, around 16.25. But he has got a very, very tough task in front of him, and I genuinely wish him all the best. I can't forget his image of a hippo, and he was describing the hippo's mouth and saying that's how wide our deficit is. And I've never forgotten that. Whenever I watch these wildlife documentaries and I see those hippos, I think of Tito's comment. But look, we wish him well. South Africa is a big engine in sub-Saharan Africa, and they're in a very difficult point. There've been 7 years of negative per capita GDP. It's a very difficult recovery to engineer. Just to touch on a couple of other stories of yours, the tech firm Altron moving to list Bytes UK subsidiary on the JSE and LSE. Look, we know in the pandemic phase, technology, digitization, e-commerce, which is the areas which have been really hot. So you would expect more listings of tech firms. I'm surprised we haven't seen more. because definitely we've witnessed a tremendous acceleration of all these trends, not least across the continent. We had that confirmation of the purchase of the Nigerian company, the payment company, for $200 million a week or so ago, as confirming that. Botswana, I'll just touch on one point about Botswana. Botswana currently is the fastest growing COVID situation on the continent. It's come out of left field as far as I can see. I'm not sure what's driven it, but the numbers are spiking there in a very big way. And of course, they've already said that they're going to the multilaterals for budgetary support. But, as we've spoken, Botswana is very well managed. I imagine, when they come with a request, they tick all the boxes, in my experience. And just finally, Zambia obviously has got problems. They're probably the first sub-Saharan African country to default. S&P's already run ahead of that and said, notwithstanding the 30-day grace period, that it is in default. Bonds are trading at 46 or 45 cents in the dollar. And again, that's another very complicated situation that we're witnessing in Lusaka.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Ali. On Zambia's default, are we likely to see other African countries? There is the rumor that look out for countries which are heavily in debt, like Kenya, Djibouti, Burundi. Are we likely to see countries follow Zambia's trend?
So we have an interesting situation, and I think if you look at the Eurobond market, obviously Zambia is now corrected, but otherwise the Eurobond market is treating most of the African credits as if they're not going to default. Which is interesting. But I think it speaks to the fact that the Eurobond market is largely a liquidity trade. There's a ton of liquidity in the Western world at 0% or close to zero, and that continues to prop up the Eurobond market. But my concern is really, Agnes, that we're now in a situation where some of these numbers simply don't add up. And frankly, I expect not necessarily a domino effect, but a number of other situations. We have a number of countries which are close to triple C, Congo, Brazzaville, Gabon, and then other things come into play, right? How important is that country to its creditors? The geoeconomics of some of these countries. Djibouti, for example, you would have thought that China will go the extra mile given the investment that they've made. So there are lots of complexities in answering your question, but I do think that Zambia is a precursor for a number of other countries which are going to default because the numbers just don't make sense to me.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Ali. Just because of time, Akintunde, please give us just 1 minute outlook. What do you think the Nigerian outlook will be next week? And also the same for you, Onyenka, in less than a minute. Thank you. Akintunde, I come right to you.
Thank you. The Nigerian market, since we've seen a kickstart back to business, we expect the equity market will continue to trend. This is based on the fact that the interest rate on fixed income instruments are close to 0% now. The last PMA was about 1% for the 90-day, and they are 182 days. We're expecting that the rate will continue getting depressed. Looking at the liquidity in the system, liquidity is really high. I'm looking for investment outlets without no private view. So we're expecting that we'll keep seeing funds trickle into the equity market, and we'll see a bit of rally in the equity market, while the fixed income market will remain order driven, regardless of the low rates.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Akintunde. Onyenka, your take?
Yeah, I'll retract what Tunde said. We should see some positive movements due to the weakness of interest rates in the fixed income market. However, the weak macroeconomic cloud continues to hang over the Nigerian equity market right now. Investors are still sort of wary about the economic impact of the destruction that we've seen so far. And finally, we should see investors watch out for the earnings as they come in, this week, next week, to guide their investment decisions.
Super. We'll be back here tomorrow to discuss exactly what happens after businesses reopen today, whether there's some hope. We're hoping to see a little bit of positivity after Buhari's very long-awaited speech, but critics say it didn't help the situation. Finally, over to North African market. Ali, briefly, Afrexim Bank. Afrexim Bank, one of the stories, Afrexim Bank is going to raise $5 billion towards COVID vaccine, which is interesting. And also, Fitch rating agencies cut Morocco's rating from to double B from triple B for the outlook. Another story is the Egyptian market pulls 21 billion overseas portfolio in 5 months. This is despite the COVID situation. Ali, North Africa.
So let me start with Afrexim Bank to raise $5 billion to buy COVID-19 vaccines. Look, this is a good initiative. I'm a little bit skeptical about a vaccine, and I'll tell you why. If you remember the time of HIV, people spoke about a vaccine turning up, It's never turned up. There has not been a vaccine for SARS-CoV-1 to date. And I think, we are way too optimistic about the speed with which a vaccine will be made available. However, having said all of that, I have to commend Dr. Benedict Oromo of the Afrexim Bank for at least making this money available in the event a vaccine is found. And therefore, this is, I think, an important initiative. My question is a skepticism around the actual efficacy of a vaccine. Fitch cutting Morocco's rating to BB plus from triple B minus. Look, that was expected. They'd signaled it. They've now put it on a stable outlook. Morocco, in my view, is a very strong economy. It's obviously having a dip, but it remains geoeconomically very important to that Africa-Europe corridor. And I think they made tremendous investments in that space. And therefore, I, for one, would be a buyer on dips, particularly on the Eurobond. Egypt, this is incredible, isn't it? Look, how many other African countries can raise $21.1 billion overseas portfolio investors? And this speaks to the joined up thinking. You might criticize President al-Sisi, you might criticize the government, but one thing you can't criticize is the savviness of the financial civil servants in Egypt. They understand how to signal the market. They are, even in the depths of a huge pandemic, they're sucking in capital like that. Of course, it's been one of the best trades for international investors. It's been a positive carry trade since the devaluation. But again, they bit the bullet. They devalued. They let the market find the correct price. Too many of our countries are mucking around, playing with Mickey Mouse FX rates, and all it does, it stops people coming in and investing in your country. So kudos to them.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much, Ali. I think despite the political uncertainty in Egypt, I'm always fascinated the separation of the politics and the private sector, which obviously speaks to the fact that that's how they've been able to attract such investment. So thank you very much, Ali Kansachu, Rich Management, Akintunde Suleiman, and Onyenka Ejarma. I really thank you for taking your time this morning. Boasen will be back tomorrow, running the show like he always does. But mine is just really to thank you for your time and great analysis. Have a good day, everyone.